But there was also a lot of chatter about, hey, how do I meet a girl with a cave diving qualification and trimix qualification? And someone said, well, how many are there? And someone looked it up and said, well, I think there's 7 maybe now. And then someone said, no, there's 112. And then someone just randomly said, no, it's 4,673. And the next response was, dude, has anyone got the phone numbers?
Welcome to the Two Authors Chat Show, an entertaining podcast with 2 best-selling authors connecting readers with an eclectic array of distinguished guests through lively conversation and interviews. Hosted by mystery, suspense and thriller writers Douglas Pratt and Nicholas Harvey.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. I think we've got a fun show ahead of us. Douglas Pratt, what have you been up to lately?
Mr. Nicholas Harvey. Well, shoot. Let's see. I just got back from my boot down in Gulfport, where I was.
Your boot?
My boot.
That's German. That's German for boot. Like das Boot.
Das Boot.
Yeah.
Das Boot. Yeah. I was just digging around in the bilge. I was doing a lot of boat work, trying to get it ready to do a little, sailing this summer. I had to replace a bilge bump. That was fun. Nothing like running a wire.
Sounds lovely.
Yes. Yeah. I'd like to figure out how to write it off so I could put that into a chase book. But I haven't done that yet. So other than that, I was kind of very quiet week. Lovely wife is gone. The house is empty, and I don't know what single people do. Like, honestly, I sat around and I tried to write and work, but without her, I just kind of got all like, I didn't do anything productive. Let's just say that.
Isn't that weird? I'm exactly the same way. If Cheryl's away for more than like a day, I'm like lost. I feel like I'm not anchored at all. It's very strange.
I mean, I put pants on at least 3 of the 4 days. Yeah.
No, I stay pantless the whole time.
Pantless the whole time, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Gets tricky at the market, but
it's very tough, yeah.
That's what TikTok's for.
Can you get away with that down there in Bonaire? So
yeah, we're in Bonaire. So I think we were transitioning last show. And, we were talking about favorite crustaceans. And I said, I like a slipper lobster.
Yeah.
Which hopefully everyone Googled and looked at a slipper lobster if they didn't know what it was. We saw one last night. Oh, you didn't Google it?
I did not Google it.
Come on, man. Come on.
It wasn't in the show notes. You should have put it in the show notes. I might have done it. So you saw one last night, huh?
Yeah, we did. We did it's so great because we're right by the water, right? So we were done with work. She knocks off at 5. We kind of wandered down. We were going to go to happy hour. And then we're like, water looks pretty good. Come on, let's go. So we went and grabbed a tank and our gear and jumped in off the pier and went for a dive. Yeah, it was brilliant. And saw a slipper lobster, which was very cool. And a bloody great big tarpon.
Oh, wow.
Which they have tarpon around here and they're cruising around, big silver things. Some look like a chrome bumper. Yeah. So they look like a big chrome bumper. And it was getting dusk and then dark, and we were finishing the dive at dark, and so we had a light. And so all the little stuff comes out in front of the light, and the little shrimpies and all kinds of stuff will flutter around it because they get drawn to the light like flies do above the water. And then slightly bigger fish coming. So the tarpon love to come and grab whatever's trying to grab the little stuff in there. So it's bloody great big tarpon. I mean, it was as long as Cheryl. He was a little batshit crazy. He kept sneaking up on us and coming alongside us and then zipping ahead through the light. But he was like doing circles and coming back. It was kind of eerie.
So this is all at night then. So you're
dark, and we've been in the water with them before. We've been in the water actually with loads of them. But this guy, there was something creepy about this guy. He kept getting really close, and he would come straight towards you, like in the last minute, just turn away. I've had sharks do that, but it was a little funky having a tarpon do it.
What's the biggest shark you've seen?
How big I tell people, or how big it actually was?
How big would Cheryl say it was?
Well, there's the lens effect underwater, right? So everything looks bigger. Yeah. Probably the bull sharks in Key Largo around the Duane wreck that were regularly there. There was some big fellas there that were, I'd say, probably 9-10 feet, which is pretty big when they look about 18 feet long when you're in underwater, So
yeah, I've biggest I got was a 4-foot nurse shark once, but that's been about it. So
I had a 3-foot nurse shark turn on me. He was swimming along, and I'm kind of following with a GoPro, and I'm not like up its butt or anything, but I'm following it. It just all of a sudden whips around and comes at me and charges me. And I bonked it on the nose with the GoPro.
Wow.
And it turned away and swam off. But it was doing a hip check on me. It was, which, I was interfering in his world, so it was my fault. But still, you got a little bonk on the nose for his trouble. Don't write letters about that, people, please. I didn't hurt them.
Yeah, it's okay.
Absolutely fine.
He's fine. I mean, you just booped him, right? Boop.
Yeah, I just gave him a little dink. It's pretty funny on the video too, because the video was running. You get a face full of shark. Yeah.
Ah, you should post that on our Two Authors Chat Show page. Give everybody an idea what it looks like. So
I should, yeah.
If you
except
can find
I really
the video.
don't want all the letters yet, and I don't know where the video is.
All the letters. We only have 7 people who listen to us out there. So.
Yeah, yeah. That's our mums, our wives.
Your mom listens, really? So.
Yeah, she does, and she'll probably be the one that writes the letter. Nicholas,
how dare you?
Leave those sharks alone. They're not bothering you.
I think we talked about this before. The people who write when I refer to a mahi as a dolphin, you can't do that.
You're eating dolphin.
You're eating flipper. Yeah, so everybody knows that in certain parts of the country, like Florida, that they refer to mahi as dolphin fish and call it dolphin, and it's very confusing for people elsewhere who think, if you're in Seattle going, why are they eating a dolphin?
So, okay, what am I working on? I am writing the Ore Verdi at the moment, which is the next A.J. Bailey book, and I'm having a ton of fun starting that. What's really cool is it's a dual timeline thing like I like to do, especially in the A.J. Bailey stories. And it's set back in 1976 is when it starts. And the wreck of the Ore Verdi has been sunken wreck there as an artificial reef since 1980. And there's a lot of rumor and story behind what that boat was used for and how it got there and what was on it when it arrived and what happened to the people. There's loads of rumor and what have you, and very little actual fact you can find on the internet, which is perfect to take a
great.
factual,
yes.
Part of the facts of this ship and then invent a whole story behind it.
Make
and I've
up
got
the whole back. Yes, those are perfect for that. So.
Yeah. And I've got some people being a huge help to me on Cayman, people who have lived there forever. There's a guy called Bob Soto, is the pioneer of diving in Cayman. And he's very well known in the diving circles, passed away a few years back. But his lovely wife, Susie Soto, is being super kind. And she was around at that time. Bob was really involved in cleaning out and sinking the ship as an artificial wreck back in 1980. And so she's putting me in touch with people who can give me some info on it. So that's a ton of fun.
I've been plugging away on my newest chase book, which is Gulf Dreams still. A little more kind of an action adventure going with him around the Suwannee River in Florida. So it's going to be hopefully some fun, a little bit of adventure and excitement. So nothing as exciting as sunken ships just yet, but who knows where the story goes. So.
Oh, it will. It'll get there. So, okay. And we're both writing Missing in the Keys, of course, which is our Green Wolf thriller series that we're starting. And it's back with me. You just wrote a fantastic scene for it, which brings us on to our question. And you'll find out why Missing in the Keys ties into that in a moment.
So our question of the week from our audience members comes from Wichita, Kansas, with Danica Johnson, who asks, why don't we narrate our own books? Do you want to answer that one for me, Nick?
Yeah, because we suck at it. That's why. And as that was an interesting question, and we thought we'd, rather than just tell you we'd suck at it, we'll prove to you that we suck at it. It's obvious
if you're already listening to this show.
Yeah,
we
if
suck
you
at
listen to the podcast, you'd realize we'd be terrible if we had a script. So we have a special guest to help us with this bit, the lovely Kim Bretton. Hello, Kim.
Hello.
And Kim is the fabulous voice behind AJ Bailey and Nora Summer on the audiobooks for my book. So thanks for joining us.
She also does the intro for us here. So she's that great voice you hear before you hear, a couple of us just butcher.
Yeah, until we destroy it. So yeah. She is the only professional part of our podcast. All right. So what we've got an excerpt from the book that Doug and I are writing together, and we're about halfway through it, called Missing in the Keys.
On pre-order now on Amazon. You can look it up.
Roll up, get it while you can.
That's right.
So we're going to do a, what do they call it when it's multiple people reading it? That's called something, right? Multicast or ensemble. So we're going to try that.
Play.
I'm going to be reading the narrative. Doug is going to do the American voices, and Kim is going to do Charlie. Voices. All the American voices. So you've got to come up with different ones. And Kim is going to do Charlie Green, who is the English, one of the protagonists in the story, who's English.
I think back to what Nick Thacker said when he said everyone sounds like a sarcastic white guy. So this is probably where we're going with mine.
Okay, well, I'm going to kick it off. So you ready, guys?
Mm-hmm. Excited.
All right.
Very much.
2 curving pools sat adjacent to each other with a thatch roof palapa housing the tiki bar between them. Beyond the second pool was the beach and the ocean, where a mixture of bronzed and burning bodies lay on deck. I'm already laughing. Bronzed and burning bodies. They got a little red glow to them. On deck chairs in the bright sun. The first pool was well shaded by tall palms, and Grant and Charlie scanned the lounges for the 2 men from the funeral home. If they were still wearing their dark trousers and shirts, they'd stand out like a sore thumb. No one looked familiar, and Charlie realized they were the 2 who were overdressed. As everyone else, there's a typo.
I don't think you're even trying.
I swear I'm trying.
I don't think you're trying.
You sound like every teacher I ever had in school. Harvey, you're not trying. As everyone else wore a bathing suit of some description. She sat next to Grant, who'd found 2 empty bar stools under the palapa, and the bartender moved their way.
What'll be, guys? Corona. Grant replied.
Hey, the professional screwed up.
I thought I was red.
You're purple. You go away. You're purple. That's you now.
Corona, Grant replied without hesitation.
We're sort of on the job here, Charlie whispered. Then, in a louder voice, just a water, please.
See, already it's like I feel like I need to start over. It's like that's the way you're supposed to do it. Like she even moved in and out of the mic to do the anyway.
Yes, yeah.
The bartender looked at her as though he didn't understand the meaning of water.
Water, she repeated slowly, raising one eyebrow.
Water in a bowl for the dog. Got it. What would you like?
I want the bloody water, mate, she said irritably.
The bartender shook his head and turned away to get the drinks.
Nice going, Grant hissed. Bartenders are the best source of info, and you just pissed ours off right out of the gate.
Getting pissed isn't going to help anything, Charlie snapped back.
That's what I'm saying, Grant reiterated.
Then why are you ordering booze at 10 past something in the bloody morning? She said, looking at her watch as she realized she had no idea what the time was.
Because I don't want the bartender pissed at me, Grant replied, rolling his eyes.
Charlie scoffed. Is this one of those American things where you lot buggered up a perfectly good language, isn't it?
I was enjoying listening to the story, to be honest. I forgot to do something. Grant looked at her like she had 2 heads.
Pissed means drunk in England, she explained. Pissed off means you're mad about something, but not the mad about something meaning you really like it, the cheesed off type.
The bartender set a Corona bottle and a stainless steel bowl full of water in front of Grant and a child-sized glass of water by Charlie.
Just let me handle this one, Grant said quietly, shaking his head at Charlie and placing the bowl on the ground before turning to the bartender. Hey, buddy, have you seen a couple of East European guys kicking around, buzz cuts, pissed off looking, he said, emphasizing the word and throwing a glance at Charlie. Drinking vodka straight like some people drink water, the bartender replied rhetorically, also giving Charlie a sideways look. Been by today? Grant asked. The bartender looked back and forth between the 2 of them. You cops? Grant shook his head. Private. I don't see any trouble. I don't need any trouble in the bar, bro, the bartender said, leaning close to Grant. Reflects badly on us, according to management.
Grant slid a $20 bill across the bar, which quickly disappeared under the bartender's hand.
Haven't seen them this morning, but they've been by a few times during the day earlier this week. Word has it, they're here till the bar closes at night, though. Shitty tippers. Loud, pissing everyone else off.
The bartender straightened up, wiped the already clean bar top with a cloth, and moved on to another customer. Wrench slurped at the water in the bowl, splashing more of it over the floor and the bar than he consumed.
Ew! Charlie complained as her feet got wet.
We might have to come back tonight, Grant said, swiveling in his stool to face the pool.
Swiveling in his stool? I think that's different from on his stool.
On his stool? I mean...
Where's his stool?
I have no idea where... Oh, my God.
And at this point, he's like, okay, we get your point.
Yeah. So, folks, that is a fine example of why we don't read our own audiobooks.
We don't swivel in our stool.
Oh, I think we swiveled in our stool quite a bit. I think that's enough. I think if anyone's still listening.
We've lost the church crowd.
There was good stuff from both of you.
There was moments. There was definitely moments.
There were.
Well, Kim, thank you very much for coming in and
thank you, Kim.
demonstrating to everybody why we don't read our own audiobooks and you're the professional.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, folks, time to move on to our interview, which I'm very excited about. This week's show is titled You Go First, because we're interviewing Jill Heinerth, a tech and cave diver, explorer, and author of Into the Planet, My Life as a Cave Diver. Yep, she is an amazing record-setting technical cave diver.
That's cool.
And and if ever there's a situation where it's like, yeah, you go ahead and go first, I think
well, sounds
her life has been
perfect. Yeah,
yeah, her life has been a series of that. So let's move on now to the interview. Welcome to the show, Jill Heinerth.
Hey, thank you. Great to be here with you.
I'm geeking out, as I told you before we went on air, because as an avid scuba diver, I ate up your book a couple of years ago, and I read at night, so I would read in bed at night, and I'd be like, oh my God, I can't put it down. She's in the middle of this cave, like 200 feet down.
That's the way to write a book too. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, it's nonfiction, and it's got a cliffhanger at every page. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm the explorer in residence for the Royal Canadian Geographical Society, but I'm a full-time underwater explorer. So if you want to have a career in the underwater world, you've got to kind of piece it together with a lot of different activities. So I'm a speaker, author, consultant, educator, all kinds of things, like anything that keeps me underwater.
Yeah, there's no college courses that go, here's a way of making your living underwater, right?
No. Yeah, I started this career like pre-internet days. So I was writing stories and printing physical photos and mailing them to magazines to try and to get placed,
Yeah. And you have a graphic arts background, yeah?
I do. Yeah. That was my formal education, was in visual communications design. So yeah, I've just turned that creative profession to underwater creative professional. Yeah.
And it's a dichotomy of right brain, left brain, right? Because the majority, now when we say you spend your time underwater, you're not swimming. I mean, you do go and swim around the reefs and look at the pretty fishes and what have you. But where you've made a name for yourself is tech diving, and hardcore tech diving in cave systems mainly, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of trying to use technology to go to places where people haven't been before. But, your comment about right brain, left brain is right on, because yeah, obviously, like the creative professionals using that right brain, and we all know how we just kind of lose track of time when we're doing something creative or even like spilling ourselves into the computer. But then I've got life support equipment that's extraordinarily complex, and so I can't lose track of time. I've got to maintain that life support environment, and that's extraordinarily dangerous.
That's probably. I've got about 800 dives recreationally. And I've ventured into the shipwrecks. I lived in Key Largo for a while, so I've been all through the shipwrecks there, which is, and that's fascinating to me. And I'm about to start next month a tech course. I'm a little daunted by it, and I'm really excited about it. But that's the big difference between recreational diving, where we go on holiday and jump off the back of the boat and go down to 60 feet, maybe 100 feet, and swim around the reef and come back up, is the margins for the life support, right? Because we don't breathe underwater. That's a problem, right? We have to take stuff with us to breathe underwater.
Yeah, but as a recreational diver, a sport diver, you can surface at any time. You just swim up, if you're having a problem. But yeah, you're entering the world of tech diving, and we consider that to be a ceiling over your head. It could be a virtual ceiling in the sense that you can't come up because you need to allow your body to, reacclimate to surface pressures. But it could also be a physical ceiling over your head, a wreck or a cave, or, somewhere where you can't just call mission control for help. So yeah, you carry more gear, you do a lot more with teamwork and planning. And I think you're going to absolutely love the journey.
I'm excited about it. Yeah. It'll be the first step. Recreational is down to 130 feet. This will extend me down to 150 feet and do venture into decompression and stuff. So let's touch on that. So for those of that are listening that aren't divers or techie divers, decompression and what that means, because I think most people have heard of that term, decompression. But in as simple terms as you can manage, explain that barrier.
Decompression illness, or the bends. I mean, a lot of people have heard about that on TV, but what it basically is thinking of yourself like a bottle of soda pop with the cap on. So when you descend underwater, under pressure, the weight of the water, your body stores gases that it can't use. Like we metabolize oxygen, but it has no use for the rest of the stuff in the breathing mix. So it just stashes it away in your tissues in the form of little micro bubbles. And as long as you come up slowly on like a predetermined schedule, returning to the surface, then that pressure is relieved very slowly and those bubbles just get sort of breathed away through respirations. But if you swam up too fast or didn't do that necessary time, then you would suffer from decompression illness, which would be the same as sort of ripping the cap off a shaken bottle of soda pop. And those bubbles come out of solution, and then all of a sudden they lodge in places and can cause anything from itching and pain to paralysis and death.
So to put it in Doug's perspective here, Doug, when she says soda can, think beer, okay? And think someone banged the beer on the table, and it goes, yeah.
Okay. When I dropped a beer behind the bar, I get it,
Yeah, just open it really slowly. Yeah, there you go.
Nick thinks he's got to talk real slow to me because, I'm from the South.
Nice.
We translate for each other sometimes.
Yeah, I guess we're like three people divided by a common language, right?
Right, yes. And Nick thinks he's always right, so.
What do you mean? What do you mean think? But this is becoming the Canadian show, huh, Doug? We've had...
Yes, we've had.
This is the third or fourth Canadian on. So we've had James Hinchcliffe, Sean Pete, who works in NASCAR, is their ex-ice hockey player. So yeah, we're on a roll with the Canadians. Anyway,
cool.
Getting back to the banging the soda can or beer bottle. So when we're talking about the ceiling, you're talking about this physiological ceiling, literally. If you just keep going up, you're going to have a big problem and potentially die. So whether you're in a wreck or in a cave or simply going deep, you have a decompression commitment on those gases. And those margins are super small, right? So if you get that just a little bit wrong on a stop, there's a lot to compensate for that. And some of the depths you're going to, how long are you spending in decompression? This is the stuff that amazes me at the real deep depths.
Yeah, my longest dive mission is 22 hours. And I think it's important to note that this stuff is all experimental still because so few of us have actually done this, right? Like, we don't have like mice that we can do testing on that are useful, right?
Mice in scuba gear. How do you get the flippers to stay on their little feet?
What kind of, their eyes are over here, so you get weird masks, right? That's kind of strange too. So.
It is funny though, like decompression illness was first detected by a scientist that actually saw a bubble in the eye of a snake. So, I mean, there have been like pressurized testing of animals, but it doesn't necessarily equate to the kind of like schedules that we have to develop for decompression. And for me as a woman, there's even less information out there because there's so few of us that have done these very deep, very long dives. And we don't know if the decompression algorithm, the mathematics is right, and B, we also don't know what the long-term effects are going to be on our bodies.
22 hours.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Have you figured, I was going to ask this later actually, but I got to ask it now. So do you have a routine during decompression stops? I mean, some people read books, right? They take books down there and read them.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's funny because I always say, books used to be made so much better. like National Geographic magazine was awesome because of the quality of the paper that it was printed on, and it would really last.
Holds up in salt water. That's a good selling point.
Even paperback novels, like in the day, like you could take a paperback novel down and you could read it, and then you just kind of chuck it in the back of your car and it kind of dries up in this big open mess, but take it back in the water and the paper hasn't fallen apart. But now, I'm sure it's much better for the environment now that paper is a little bit thinner and more biodegradable, but it doesn't last through deco anymore.
Oh my God. That's a note to self. As soon as I write about diving, I've got to make sure my books hold up on decompression stops underwater.
Well, although now you could take down a tablet, right? And you could be using an e-reader or a phone underwater or bone conduction headphones. There's all kinds of other stuff to pass the time now.
Oh, wow, yeah. That's true, because I guess you do. You have like things you can listen to at this point, huh? So
yeah. Those really long dives for me, although that sounds like a long time, like the bottom time, so the working portion of the dive is about 5 hours, and it's sort of balls to the walls, like hard physical effort. But after that 5 hours, I have quite a few notes that I want to write down while everything's fresh in my head. And so I spend a couple hours drawing or writing down notes or observations so that I just don't forget.
You could write a book, Nick, at the decom, maybe. Just stop off and jot notes down and outline of, your next AJ book. So,
yeah, it could be the whole stories. The deep dive and decompression stop. It takes place in 22 hours.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so one other point I want to touch on, and then I'll let Doug get a word in here. But you touched on the fact that there are female divers in tech diving. So, in recreational sport diving, it's almost an equal mix now, both on the participant side. I mean, it's a couples sport in a lot of cases, especially in holiday vacation areas. Couples go and they both dive, right? So, and it might be still shifted slightly, maybe it's 60-40, but there's a lot of female participation. And then on the instructor dive guide side, there's a lot of female people involved in that. But as soon as you step into tech, not so much.
Well, even in the recreational world, it is still growing. Like it's actually in the 30s percentage-wise for women in diving and professionals. Although, if you go to Asia, it's reverse. There's more women in diving than men in Asia, which is kind of interesting. Yeah. But it's also improving. I mean, honestly, I remember a time where, I had 10 women friends in the realm of technical diving, and each one of them was in a different country.
Yeah, right.
There really weren't many. Here's a funny story. When the internet sort of chat rooms were young and fresh, there were technical diving chat rooms that started up, and we were talking about decompression algorithms and things. But there was also a lot of chatter about, hey, how do I meet a girl with a cave diving qualification and trimix qualification? And someone said, well, hey, how many are there? And someone looked it up and said, well, I think there's 7 maybe now. And then someone said, no, there's 112. And then someone just randomly said, no, it's 4,673. And the next response was, dude, has anyone got the phone numbers?
Oh, so that's a dating app right there. So
yeah. And I think the real numbers were closer to about 7 back then. So
I've even got a couple of taglines that I'm gonna save because of the lack of appropriateness. But I think it'd be. I've got a question. I mean, I also am a diver. I'm not. I'm not logged as nearly as many as Nick has. But so generally, most people think it's kind of a relaxing. You're not getting too excited when you're doing, especially recreational diving, but you dove inside of an iceberg. So what's that feeling like as far as that's got to get your heart rate going. And you just said you do it too. You're working a lot for that, a little bit did you down there. So can you give us a little bit of insight into that?
Yeah. So that was back in 2001 when the largest iceberg in recorded history broke away from Antarctica. And I pitched with my colleagues to go there. And we pitched National Geographic saying, hey, we're going to go there and be the first people to cave dive inside an iceberg. And they were like, whoa, there's caves inside of icebergs. And we're like, hell yeah. But, as you can imagine, it was a complete hypothesis. And yet, they funded us. We got down there, made this horrendous 12-day crossing of the Southern Ocean from New Zealand to reach the Ross Sea. And then, it took us 30 days down there before we found what I considered a proper cave system. We found lots of caverns and overhangs and all kinds of things like that. But I was starting to freak, thinking, oh my God, National Geographic gave us all this money. We sure better come back with some great cave footage. And it was about day 30 when we found this massive system inside the iceberg. Awesome. And part of the reason why, there were things that we saw that were well, that could be an entrance, that could be an entrance, but it's scary. There's big chunks of ice calving away. Icebergs are in motion and constant flux. So we were kind of getting to know the environment and decide on, what was safe-ish and what we could accomplish. And every day we would kind of rethink that whole safety aspect.
Oh, I bet, yes.
And move forward in the best way possible.
And how did that work out?
Honestly, I think we had some pretty close calls.
Yeah, I was going to say, I read your book. You almost died.
Yeah. I mean, we had experienced calving when we were inside the iceberg, closing the doorway that we got into. We got swept through an iceberg. We got trapped in an iceberg pinned down by currents. And then, literally hours after my last dive down there, the iceberg we'd just been inside of literally exploded.
Wow.
And turned into a sea of slush as far as the eye could see.
Oh my God. I knew a little bit about this because I read the book when the guys read the book. This is the part where I stayed up half the night because I couldn't put it down. She's inside an iceberg and trapped with these currents changing and moving, and they have no idea how they're going to get out now. And it's and you're quite deep underwater as well as being, inside an iceberg, right?
I think that story is what nailed my my contract with Penguin Random House, because my editor was sort of reading my proposal, and I guess she did sit up all night.
Wow, that's awesome.
And she said she woke up cold. She thought she was hypothermic by the morning.
Oh, wow. I bet it was cold. I mean, I was like, that's, yeah.
Yeah, salt water gets colder than fresh water. And so, somewhere in the range of minus 1.8 to minus 3 Celsius. So 27, 28 Fahrenheit, it would be the temperature. So a tenth of a degree colder, and it would be solid.
That's chilly, believe me.
And I'm sure you got protective gear, but even with that gear on, I mean, you feel that temperature as well. Are you so well insulated? Yeah.
No, I would say it's never what I would call comfortable. And on some of those dives, it was awful. I had a leaky glove on one of those dives, and I thought I was going to lose my hand. I just it felt like a piece of wood on the end of my arm.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It was crazy.
This is all in dry suits, obviously. And I my wife and I did our dry suits to dive Silfra Fissure in Iceland.
Oh, and, nice. Yeah.
Amazing experience.
So, no iceberg.
It's no iceberg, no. And it was
but it's pretty cold.
But it was freshwater, and it was 1 degree above freezing. But I can tell you, when I got in and I'm like, hey, this isn't bad. And then I dipped my head under, because if you have a mask on and you have a hood that comes kind of around here, but you've got to have room for the regulator. So all your cheeks are exposed here, and literally those parts of your cheeks, it's like someone just smacked you in the face.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's cold. I can't imagine being there for so long.
For those that don't know, why you would want to go diving in Iceland, Silfra is amazing. It's crack in between the two tectonic plates. And so you can outstretch your arms and touch North America on one side and Europe on the other side. And fortunately, those plates are spreading.
Yeah.
so it's some of the clearest water you'll see anywhere in the world. It's quite stunning.
The day we did it, it was a miserable day outside. It was foggy, drizzly, and you couldn't see probably 100 yards out there. So brilliant chap was the guide for it. It was just my wife and I that took with him. And I'm like, so it's not going to be that great viz today. He said, just wait. above the water, you could see it was hazy. And as soon as you dropped below, it was like looking through gin. The only thing that stopped as far as you could see was the fact that there was rocks in front of me, 150 yards away. Phenomenal.
It's amazing to see further in the water than the air. It's just, it really throws your head into a spin.
And you get a lot of that in the cave diving that you do, right? And it's funny. You think cold water is going to be kind of murky, but cold water actually is some of the clearest water you can see through because there's no microscopic life or less microscopic life, right?
Well, it depends. I mean, in the Arctic, I've definitely been foiled by incredible plankton blooms. Like plankton is still the primary production in the Arctic. And so if you're there kind of at the wrong time or sort of too late into the season, then those plankton blooms really, turn it into sort of a greenish murk. But it's feeding the ocean, and it's, that plankton is the lungs of the planet, feeding the oxygen that we breathe too.
Okay, so I've got to ask you this question. You go down inside these cave systems below the surface, hundreds of feet, and inside the system, you can measure in kilometers, right? How far you're in. Do you ever have a moment where you're like, what am I doing here? Like, I mean, you are
absolutely
so far from civilization, especially some of the places you did in Central America, where even when you come out, you're miles and miles from civilization. You have those moments?
Absolutely. And, I always say to people, like, people assume that I'm fearless just because I do things that have a very high risk factor, but I'm neither fearless nor foolish. Like, I'm scared every time I go diving, and that whole pre-dive, workup has to be about thinking about, well, what can kill me today, and will I be able to overcome this? Like, do I have the right people, the right tools, the right technology? Am I current, am I capable of self-rescue? Am I capable of buddy rescue? And if the answer is yes, to all that stuff, and I've rehearsed everything and I've got the right gear, then I can set that fear aside for a while. But there's still things that happen underwater that startle you and, shake you back into that fear. Your heart races, your respirations increase, all that happens. And you have to be willing and able to kind of like take that deep breath and take the emotions and set them aside again until they're useful afterwards. Yeah.
I think that's a pretty unique skill, and that's what sets a lot of people aside that do extreme things. And what you do is certainly extreme. I mean, you set records for this. So it's definitely a slightly different mentality. I've been around it quite a bit in the motorsports background that I have. Obviously, race car drivers, I mean, there was this famous old quote for drivers, are they scared or do they nervous before? And I remember a driver telling me one time when I was a youngster, and I used to get really nervous before I raced, he'd say, if you ever stop getting nervous before you go out there, stop. Don't do it. Yeah, quit.
I get young divers say to me, oh, you don't want to dive with me? I'm so scared. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're exactly who I want to dive with. Because it means that you care. It means that you understand that you're taking a risk and you want to come home to your family at the end of the day, and you're less likely to make stupid choices if you're a little bit scared,
So I've got a quick question here. So you know some amazing places. So what is like left on your bucket list of I've got to dive there, or, I haven't done this yet?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't really have a bucket list because I always feel like sometimes when people have a bucket list, they approach that thing with like less than the right amount of like risk assessment and equipment and choices and things like that. So I'm always willing to go to the end of the earth and then abort, no matter how much money that I've spent. And so the same sort of thing holds true about bucket lists. It's like, yeah, there's lots of places I'd love to go diving, but my sort of personal, self-assessment or whatever, it doesn't rely on achieving those in my life, I guess. So, I mean, I'd still love to go to the Galapagos. I've never been there. That would be fantastic. But if it doesn't happen, it's okay. I kind of pinch myself every day with the opportunities that I do get.
And what's coming up next? What have you just been doing, and what's coming up next?
Well, I'm just getting off of like a lot of travel. There's an Australian film company that's actually shooting a movie about my life.
Oh, wow.
Which is kind of cool. Yeah. So I was traveling quite a bit here in Canada and Mexico, New Zealand, and all over the place. So that's in edit now. So I'm kind of...
Who played you? Do you play... Is it documentary style or is it a feature film style?
It's a documentary.
Okay, so you play you.
It's a feature doc. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, we had to do a couple reenactments, but there's just a ton of archival stuff of my life that's being integrated into the film. But the very next thing I'm doing, like in another week, I'm diving a new undisclosed shipwreck in Lake Ontario. We're doing the first images and photogrammetry on that wreck. So that'll be the very next thing. But yeah.
What sort of depth is that?
It's not too deep. It's just on the edge of recreational. So kind of cool. The other thing that's really exciting is last year I had a young mentee that worked with me. I took her on an expedition and we did lots of different work together, including making a short film and doing some science communication work. And so I encouraged her to lead this expedition, and she is going to be the leader.
Oh, that's cool.
How cool.
Show up. Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
I want to be your intern. Can I be your intern?
I met her when she was 14. So when she was 14, she literally reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm organizing a women's dive day, and I've always wanted to dive with you. Would you come?" And I'm like, "Of course I will."
Oh, how cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah. And so now she just graduated university in environmental studies and water sciences. And yeah, pretty amazing.
Great stuff. So alongside Into the Planet, which is biographical or autobiographical, since as you wrote it, you have some children's books.
I do. Yeah. The Aquanaut, my most recent, is pretty much what the story of my life as well, but for kids.
That's cool.
For 4 to 8 year olds, told mostly in pictures. But yeah, it was kind of an attempt to reach the really youngest kids and empower their dreams. So that's the Aquanaut. Yeah.
Did you do the drawings for them?
I sort of sketched out everything, but they hired an amazing New York Times best-selling illustrator of kids' books, Jamie Kim. She's fantastic. Her work's just beautiful.
Yeah. Very cool.
That's awesome. I was going to say, since we talk books anyway, what do you like to read then? Fiction, travel logs, adventure?
I'm kind of like a nonfiction. I love reading biographies too. Like I love, adventure stuff. I read a lot of mountaineering things.
Oh, yeah.
One of my favorite books is Touching the Void by Joe Simpson.
Yes.
Yep, I've read it. Yep.
Yeah, that's exceptional. But yeah, I have pretty much a nonfiction science reader. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I got to meet Ed Vistas a few years back, and I've read all of his books, and he's a pretty inspiring individual.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many similarities in terms of how people take on risk and teamwork in mountaineering too. Yeah.
It's very similar. It's a lot of what you were talking about. And actually, I was listening through some of your podcasts, which you have with your husband, correct? And it's called Into the Planet. So wherever you find this podcast, you can find Jill and her husband's podcast, which is fun to listen to. Yeah, I was listening to some of those. And a lot of your approach to things and your approach to diving is very similar to high altitude stuff. And also, I guess it's any extreme sports, but my motorsports background, I was registering a lot of things. I think if you'd chosen a different path, you probably would have been a pretty darn good race car driver, actually. You've got all the pieces in place to do that. So
I hate driving.
That may have been a hiccup in the road. That may have stopped the career.
It's so funny. What I dislike about driving is all the other people who are out of control around me. So race car driving probably be okay, but years ago I did a feature article with Volkswagen Driver magazine because I had a Volkswagen van, and they went, "Oh, well, here's an interesting user." Right? So I took the journalist on an intro to cave class because he was a diver already, and he was really interested in learning the cave dive. And during his intro to cave diving class, he quit and gave me all his equipment and told me to find some young person who could use it. So I completely traumatized this journalist. And then he asked me, "Well, what scares you?" And I'm like, "Driving."
But you came out of it neutral because you scared one guy off, but he gave you his gear to give to somebody else to start them. So you came out neutral.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And you probably gave all the stuff to a female diver, right?
I did, in fact. Yeah,
perfect.
A young girl.
See?
Yeah,
it worked out
fine.
All right, this has been fantastic, Jill. Thank you so much. And
my pleasure.
Yeah, teach me to cave dive. I did a cabin course in the cenotes in Mexico. My wife and I did.
Nice.
And I loved it. So
I was going to say,
next time you're
fun.
handing out. Yeah. It was amazing. And so next time you want an intro to cave, I'll come along. I promise you won't scare me off.
All right.
I say that. Maybe it will.
My job is to scare you when you take a cave diving class.
Yeah.
Could we do a podcast at DCOM while we're waiting? Just like, talking.
Oh, like if we can figure out how to wire ourselves to the surface, that would be amazing. Do a podcast
while we're doing it. Yeah.
Decompression stop, or at least a safety stop. Yeah, that'd be fun. All right. So behind Doug is this interesting looking wheel, which is something we do with everybody.
Yes.
He's going to spin that sucker, and we have a set of silly questions on there, and he's going to ask you one of them.
Okay.
And we do just for the sound effect. So it was.
Sounds like I'm going to win something.
It does. You're not. Just so you know, you're not.
This might be interesting for you, but what was your worst job? I mean, given that you go into iceberg, caved and exploded, I want to hear what your worst job ever was.
Yeah, what do you classify as bad?
My worst job. I can't think of one that feels unpleasant other than having to work anywhere indoors.
That's fair.
I've had weird jobs.
Weird jobs are good.
Yeah, give us a weird job.
Collecting extinct crocodile shit. Called coprolites. Yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah.
Nick's just going, what?
Well, we try and make our show educational at some point in it. So what's it called? Coprolites?
Coprolites.
So fossilized crocodile shit is coprolite.
Yeah. And then they can dissect them and see what the crocodiles were eating back in the day, that kind of thing.
That job is worse than the collecting. I'd rather shovel crocodile shit than take it apart and dissect it.
That wouldn't be fun at all.
Well, like I've had a worse shit experience underwater where
22 hours, I bet you did.
Yeah. That's called the Speleological Society of Suit Soilers, the S4. But no, I once had a bull humpback, like after an incredible whale experience, like many hours long with many dozens of humpback whales. A bull humpback came right by me, swiped his tail fluke within a millimeter of the dome of my camera, and then let out like a massive, like multi-ton shit. That I was then swimming through. So I think that was his sign to like leave his wife and baby alone.
That's what humpback whales think of you.
Well, I've never been so happy to swim in shit. It was hilarious at the time. But yeah,
I've had some
shit.
I was gonna say I've had some jobs where I felt like I was swimming in shit, but not literally. So
literally. Yeah.
We'll leave on that note. That's a great note to let off on. Jill, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you.
Nice to join you.
Oh, thanks for listening, everyone. That was a hilarious show. Great information there. It was fun to have her on.
Yeah, it's educational. Our show is educational, people.
If you think the Two Authors Chat Show, you think swimming in shit.
That's going to be our new tagline. Have you been swimming in shit lately? Listen to the Two Authors Chat Show.
That's exactly right. Yes.
Folks, remember to subscribe to the show so you can get some more of this. And please give us a 5-star review. I'm begging you. Just put 5 stars down. Just throw us a bone. Check out the show notes for cool links to our books and social media and Jill's stuff. Into the Planet is the name of her book. Grab it, read it. It's fantastic. And support the show by buying or gifting our books. We don't have a Patreon or anything going right now, so the best way to support us is by buying our books. We appreciate it.
Awesome. And our next episode, we're going to have a thriller author, Ernest Dempsey, who does some archaeological thrillers. Exciting stuff he writes. Hilarious guy. I think you'll enjoy him a lot.
All right. Until then, be cool to each other.
Yes, and fair winds and following sea.
You've been listening to the Two Authors Chat Show with Nicholas Harvey and Douglas Pratt.